Hello, everybody, and welcome to the pre-show. I'm here with Cece and Sil. How are you guys doing today?
I'm good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Good.
Other than the weather, but yeah.
Cece, I saw you bobbing your head. Do you like this kind of music? Do you like that music?
I did like it. I was like, it sounds really good with headphones on. I usually,
Yeah, I like it
We're
too.
really
yeah.
feeling the vibe. Really feeling the vibe. Okay,
Thanks for
so
calling me out.
it's okay. I can see you guys. I can see everybody, even though you're not in the show. So tonight's theme: anti-gravity, time travel, and alien tech. So, what are you guys' thoughts on those subjects, and anything bogging you down that you want to answer tonight?
I think it's going to be really educational. I'm like looking forward to learning new stuff
Yeah, I can attest to that.
because I really don't know much about anti-gravity, or if even that's how you say it.
Anti, maybe?
Anti or anti?
No?
Same. Potato.
Yeah.
First
Yeah,
question tonight. How do you pronounce it? Yeah.
yeah, I agree. We're going to learn a lot from this guest. I'm really, really excited about it. I'm wanting to ask them questions like how they perceive time. Is it linear? Like, is it maybe how they would describe time? What are like some of their opinions around time travel existing now? And maybe its connection to the Mandela effect. You could talk about that a little bit, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see him nodding his head, so it looks like he could answer that question for us. Good. And he's smiling,
Awesome.
so he's paying attention. Good.
Awesome.
Anything from you, Sil? Anything?
No, I think I made a fool of myself already. So.
No. You're doing good. Hello, Serena. You are a member. You're in the house tonight. Hello.
Hi, Serena.
Hello.
Thanks for tuning in. All right. Well, I guess that's it. So, everyone, thanks. We're getting ready to start the show. So, sit back, relax, and we'll see you in a couple minutes.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we will go deep into the realm of the unknown and question everything as we search for the truth. We will explore the possibility of countless phenomena within the ultraspectrum, and together we will learn that it is all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencers Support Association, and it is a live stream broadcast. If you have a question, send me a super chat or become a YouTube member. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencers Support Association. Take a seat, relax, get ready, and welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat.
Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, January 27th, 2022, and I, Ryan Stacey, am your host this evening. I'm a lion. I am I am a licensed private investigator. Pardon me. That's funny. And the director of investigations for the Experiencers Support Association. Welcome to the channel, and thank you for joining us this evening. This is live. Obviously, you can't no take backs. To super chat, click the $sign next to your name in the comment box, and if you are in the observation deck, we are inside the Experiencer Hall. Go in, put your comment and questions in that chat box. So tonight's theme is anti-gravity, time travel, and alien tech. And our guest for season 4, episode 4 is Mark Fiorentino. I hope I said that right. He's not. Yeah, awesome. Got it. Nailed it. So, author Mark Fiorentino has been obsessed with Einstein's unified field theory ever since hearing about it when he was 10. He worked for many years in the high-tech industry, including IBM. Mark Fiorentino will share his views on how the universe really works based on his study and research of Einstein's unified field theory. Pardon me. He will discuss how the applications of Einstein's theory can be used to travel through space for renewable energy and the use of future technology. He will also talk about the connection to conspiracy theories, including UFOs and alien technology they use, as well as other controversial topics such as near-death experience revelations that are linked to the theory of super relativity. So, Mark, put on your tinfoil hat. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. It's good to be here. Looking forward to this. It's going to be
awesome. Awesome. So the way we start this show is we do what's called an icebreaker, which is from Tim the Demon Guy Morrison. So I'll just play his little video here. So you guys can find Tim on Facebook and Twitter at the Demon Guy Canada. So the way that works is he gives me a question, the first question of the night. I don't know what it is. I'm going to answer it, open it right now, ask it, and that's how we kick off the show. So his question is, if you could create a reality TV show and it was guaranteed to air, what show would you want to put on TV? That's a good question.
That one's for me, huh?
Yeah.
That is really interesting because I have thought about that.
Okay.
That is, a little psychic connection going on there. Yeah, that if I could, and I've thought about it over and over, trying to come up with an idea for a ongoing reality show, I guess I would have made it about all the experiences I've had, because I got another book that's in the works, which talks all about the spiritual connections, the NDE research I did, connections with psychic mediums, all that kind of stuff, which is really hot today. Well, it just happens to be something that I experienced from the age of 19 all the way up to 66 now. And I suppose that could be an angle, but I would only have so many shows. Eventually, I'd run out of stuff. It wouldn't be a reality show anymore. But it's kind of hard to do that in my line of work with what I know. I have given it a lot of thought, though, because that's an avenue into getting the message out to the public. I guess my reality TV show would be doing what I'm doing right now, these podcasts.
This is reality. This is TV for some people. This is YouTube.
This is reality TV right here.
This is it right here, right now.
So this is my reality, our reality tonight, and we're on the adventure. So
okay. So we'll segue into that. So before we get into the nit and gritty of it all, I always like to ask the first question, and that is why are you the way that you are? Which means, how did you become this person that I just read this bio for? So how did this happen?
I'm going to try to keep it short because I could easily go 2 hours on that question. If I told you everything, if I filled in all the details. I will say this: there's two paths that I walked on together simultaneously in parallel. One was the fascination and interest in science, and Albert Einstein, who was born. I was born just 20 miles from Princeton, which is where he died, and only a month before he died, about 35 days. We just passed. We just missed each other. So that love for Einstein and physics and the unified field theory got me on the path early on. And then later on, some psychic medium type things happened. I started studying UFOs, wanted to know how they worked, assumed that since they had anti-gravity, they figured out the unified field theory, because that's a field in itself right there. And so a combination of things got me to where I am today. But for most of my life, I was just doing the same things that other people did. I was going to a job, I was a troubleshooter most of my life. So that helped hone my skills for writing the book, because what I did was troubleshot the unified field theory problem, which the question I asked myself, why can't the smartest, most brilliant people in the world solve this problem? And eventually the answer was really simple, because they were using the wrong model.
Okay.
And after troubleshooting that and realizing that, I sought knowledge for the correct model, which comes from Einstein. So it's those two things. There was, psychical things, getting your fortune told and somebody mentioning something in your future. And then it gets confirmed again by another psychic and another and another. And I'm saying, okay, something's going on here. I guess at some point in my life, I'm going to do something, but I don't know what. So I had to live my life all the way through just doing ordinary stuff. And then when I retired, I decided to write this book because I had all these ideas. Turns out that was the thing I was supposed to do.
And
so
that book that's the where is that here? What's the name of that book?
Master of Reality, which inside of it is the Theory of Super Relativity, which was, of course, inspired by Einstein and 4 other physicists of his time and slightly before his time.
Okay. So what I'm hearing there is quite the coincidence, and you do look like Einstein a little bit. You don't have the hair. Was that intentional?
I grew a beard and a mustache a long time ago, and I shaved the beard, and I never shaved off the mustache. I just can't do it. It's something inside of me says, don't shave off the mustache. So I guess there's a little resemblance there.
Well,
but
there's
I'm
jealous. I can't
to
grow
that story we may get into, especially after the second book comes out.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So let's start with Cece's question, because I think we can go. I think that's a really good question to determine where we're going, and that was what is time. So, in your opinion, what is it as we know, and what is it really? And
I had the same question. That's why I dedicated a chapter to it in my book, because it's a really relevant and important thing to figure out. And after many years of thinking, it comes down to this, basically. Distance equals rate times time. Now, you may think that's a pretty simple little equation that doesn't really, has some sort of abstract meaning. But no. What's key in this physical material world, in order for time to exist, distance has to exist. In other words, there needs to be a real physical metric. And if you don't have that, and then what I mean by that, space must be a real thing. And if you go out into outer space where there's no air, and people, a lot of scientists as well, say, well, that's nothing. And nothing could be further from the truth. The important thing to realize, space, the ether, as they called it back in the day around 1905 and before, really does exist. And I worked very hard in my book to prove it beyond any shadow of a doubt. And now that I have come to realize, as Einstein did, that space is a real thing, he even says it in a speech. So I'm making a real important point here that we have to start with a real physical distance, a measurable distance that takes a certain amount of time to traverse. And it does. It takes light 8.5 minutes to get to Earth. If space were made of nothing and you tried to plug that into the equation I just said, it would take 0 time for light to get to Earth. But we never see that. Therefore, that proves there's something out there that light's interacting with as it travels from the sun to the Earth. Even Einstein says it in his speech, The Ether and General Relativity. At the very end of the speech, he's saying the same thing in a very fancy, beautiful way that I just said. Recapitulating, we may say that according to the general theory of relativity, space is endowed with physical qualities. In this sense, therefore, there exists an ether. According to general relativity, space without an ether is unthinkable, for in such space there not only would be no propagation of light, but also no possibility for the existence for standards of space and time, measuring rods and clocks, nor therefore any space-time intervals in the physical sense. So he's basically saying the exact same thing I just said. You got to have a physical distance in order to have time. Then it emerges as something we can experience in reality, because it takes, you have a finite maximum speed, the speed of light. You have a distance, a metric out there in space, some physical real distance that's made of a substance that takes time to traverse. Those are the key ingredients that makes time exist in this universe. But if you go somewhere else where time doesn't exist, which is in the spirit realm, now all of a sudden the time over there is like all happening at the same moment, which is necessary if you want to have time travel.
Okay.
So we have two instances here in the physical realm where God set the rules when creation happened. And so basically what I'm saying is we have time because we live in a universe that has a real physical substance, a foundational field, a fundamental field called the ether. And it takes a certain amount of time. Then you can make clocks, things are ticking. It requires motion. You'll realize when you're talking about time, there's always you're watching the second hand move. There's a motion from here to there, and there's a time interval for each click. That doesn't happen. Excuse me. That doesn't happen if space is equal to nothing. All of a sudden, what happens is you have absolute time where everything is happening at once. So if we lived in a universe where space were equal to nothing, light from the farthest galaxy would be here instantly. And it would be like a bizarre world. So you got to have these physical things to have time here in this world.
So where my head's going with that is with time and then distance. And then we measure time many different ways in many different times. No pun intended, I guess. And like even with time zones, like we measure time differently. I was talking about that this morning. It's kind of interesting. So the time it is to me right now is not the same time zone somewhere else. So on Eastern time, someone in Pacific time, it's 3 hours earlier in the day.
Well, that's because you're in a different distance. If everything were local, once again, that would only happen if there was nothing in between everything, which isn't kind of an impossibility. Then you wouldn't have a 10 o'clock here and a 9 o'clock there, because it would all be the same moment. And in a sense, I believe there is an absolute time.
That's kind of where I was going to. So it's like, is these are just skills that we use to make sense of it while we live in different places? And how do we interpret what the true time is or universal time is? That's
exactly right. It's this whole experience of time is built this way so we can make sense of events in an orderly fashion. That we're going to get a series of events, and it's all going to be in an order, and it's something that our material minds can process and make sense with. If we're on the other side, studying all the NDEs that I did, they say time really doesn't exist there. It's very hard for them to describe. Time and time again, they have a real difficulty. The closest thing I get is that, time is all happening at once. And you have many instances where they can go back in time if they want with just a single thought. They can go back in time or see the future, and they can travel anywhere instantly. Again, there's that factor of motion involved. If we had infinitely fast motion, then again, time gets messed up because it becomes absolute again. So we have a universe that was specially designed so that we, with our limited minds in the flesh, could, make sense of the world and experience time intervals that make sense to us and there's no problem trying to figure out what's going on, when this is happening, when's that happening. It all works out because we live in a material physical universe that has a specific substance, the quasi-elastic solid known as the ether, and it takes a finite amount of time to traverse it. So then from that, as Einstein said, you get space-time intervals in the physical sense.
Okay. We have a super chat from Cece. She asks, what does Mark think about the concept of the speed of thought? Would it be considered as having a factor in time travel as you understand it?
If you're on the other side, the speed of thought is infinitely fast. The thing that I've always wondered, and I asked myself this, where does the thought come from? Where do your thoughts come from? And the best I can come up with on that one so far is you're actually remembering something that triggers the thought. So it's a memory that triggers your thoughts throughout your life. But the speed of thought on the other side is you think it happens. You think it, you get an answer. You have a question, you get an answer. You want to go back to see the dinosaurs? It's done like that. So over there, it's instantaneous. Over here, you're using your brain, which is an interface to this physical reality. And there's speed limits, the electrons and the whole thought process and everything takes a finite amount of time. So it's nearly infinite, but it's not. It does take time for thoughts.
So, okay. So with us in that space, so that ether, is that what the other side is? Is that ether, or that's just or is that something different? In your opinion?
It's been explained to me through, because I've kind of asked that question a little bit, and their energy is different than our energy, and that's the only explanation I've got. So it's as best as I can tell, their realm, it's pure thought and pure consciousness, and when we die, our soul, our consciousness will come out and reconnect to the universal whole, God, the infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call him. And it's a beautiful thing to behold, really, the whole process and the creation of this world and this realm and the other realm that's basically running in parallel alongside us as we speak. There's guardian angels and, of course, angels and spirits and so forth that all coexist and are helping us through in this time. So it's what I'm trying to do, I guess, basically, is trying to reconnect science with religion. Because really, in reality, it's religion or the spiritual realm that created this world through the power of intention. Many NDEers have come back and were told this by God or Jesus or whoever they talk to on the other side. They want to let people know here that God is real, the other side is real, and God created all of this. So the super relativity theory is an intelligent design theory, basically. I'm going with that, and it helped me to solve certain technical problems while I was analyzing the cosmology aspects of.
So, well, let's talk about that. So that is your super relative theory is your theory, to my understanding, as enhancing to Einstein's theory of relativity. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've really basically extended special and general relativity. Special relativity, Einstein pulled kind of a fast one on everybody. Now they've misinterpreted that one badly.
Okay.
It was painful for me to go through the research and find out that he was part of the problem that caused science and physics to jump course, change direction away from a classical field theory into quantum theory, and he tried to fix it, but the improper interpretation of special relativity really pretty much killed the ether theory, which I had to restore and prove was the correct theory in the first place, and it should have never been abandoned.
Okay, so let's talk about your theory then. So how, because that's what your book is about, and that's what that's your life's work. So explain to me what that is, and I want to learn.
Sure. Well, the main problem I solved was the unified field theory, which basically is this: electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. So it's a classical field theory. So what I mean by the fundamental field is that's the ether. That was the thing that they thought was the fundamental field. So the forces of nature come about as results of this field being deformed, bent in certain ways. So I deconstructed electromagnetism back into the electrostatic field charge, the Coulomb force, and the magnetic field. And then I looked at these two forces, and I saw there was a relationship, just as Michael Faraday discovered, along with James Clerk Maxwell. So 2/3 of this unification of force were already done by Maxwell and electromagnetism. So what I discovered by reading and studying carefully is that we start out with a primary field, a force field, the electrostatic field, the Coulomb force. All particles in this world, every last one of them have charge, are made of charge. Now, physicists might want to argue and say the photons don't have charge, but there they have a model problem again, and they're really wrong about that. The photon is nothing but charge. It's just equal parts of positive and negative charge, which they execute the math and say, well, +1 - 1 = 0. So they misrepresent the photon as saying that there's no charge in it. Nothing could be further from the truth. And my message to them is stop doing the math. The photon doesn't do it. Neither should we. The photon's charge is +1 and -1. So basically, going back to what I was saying, all particles are charged. And therefore, in order to get the magnetic field, what Faraday noticed with all his experiments is that whenever a charge moved, it created the magnetic field. So now we're 2/3 of the way to the unified field theory. We have the cause of the magnetic field. The electrostatic charge is a structure that's in space. It's a vortex. It's a twist of space, just as they thought back then. And they mistakenly abandoned that model as well. So this vortex structure, this twist of space, starts with a little spiral and gets bigger and bigger and bigger from the front of the particle to the back of the particle. This structure causes a pressure wave because you're stretching space. Because if you look at a vortex, it's going around, space is kind of rotating. So as the particle moves through space, the electrostatic charge moves through space because it has a pressure wave in it, and that is the cause of the motion, which was hunted by Einstein and Einstein alone. Everybody else was frightened to do this.
Okay.
Because the charge moves through space, and all particles have perpetual motion, so something's causing that motion, right? So I'm describing what's causing it. So now the electrostatic charge, which is a vortex shape, moving through space, as it moves, it spins, and so the field around the ether field is forced to rotate in response to the moving charge that goes through it. That's the magnetic field, that rotation of space. And you can see when they do demonstrations on the internet showing the drawing of a magnet, you got the lines of force going in one and coming back in the other. It's clearly showing that there's a rotation going on.
Okay.
So then all that was left to do was to unite gravity to this phenomena. So I knew, okay, I got a pattern emerging here. I got magnetism by causing charge to move. When charge moves, every time it moves, a magnetic field occurs. So therefore, I'm thinking, all right, this is simple. Somehow electromagnetic fields in motion somehow cause gravity. So now we're at the point where Einstein's looking around. He knows there's convolutions of space. Einstein argued that if one believed wholeheartedly in the basic idea of a field theory, matter should enter not as an interloper, but as an honest part of the field itself. So what I'm saying is that the charges, these twists of space, are consubstantial with the space. They are made of the same thing and they exist within it. They are configurations of it, and these configurations move through and within the space. So that the space itself is not moving, but the configuration, the particle, the charge is. And when it does that, it creates a force field around it, the magnetic field. So all that was left to do was figure out how to make charges create a gravitational field, which is a different kind of deformation. It's a contraction of space. So somehow moving charges have to create a contraction of space. And it took many years to find it, a lot of thinking. But I found it in a book by Amir D. Excel, God's Equation. And he talks about, you're going to love this, Einstein's happiest thought. And where he thought about how, well, he discovered something from Paul Ehrenfest, who discovered it from Max Born, which was called the Ehrenfest paradox. So I'll describe to you. And Einstein, once he sees this, he says, this is it. This is what I need. I found the pathway to create gravity and mass, a contraction of space, which I was searching all over for Einstein to say the words contraction and gravity in the same sentence or paragraph. So in this excerpt, this is what is said. This is Einstein's happiest thought. Einstein followed the line of reasoning that began with the happiest thought of his life. Still at the Swiss Patent Office, he conducted one of the famous thought experiments. Einstein imagined a circle spinning in space. The center of the circle did not move, but its circumference was moving quickly in a circular direction. Einstein compared what happened in several reference frames, a standard tool that he used in developing the special relativity theory. Underline this in your mind now. He concluded, using his special relativity, that the boundary of the disk contracted as it spun. This is the Lorentz contraction formula, the transformation from special relativity that Lorentz and Fitzgerald came up with, and Einstein puts into special relativity. This was the way to get space to contract. He concluded, using his special relativity, that the boundary of the disk contracted as it spun. There was a force acting on the circle at the boundary, the centrifugal force, and its action was analogous to that of a gravitational force, but the same contraction that affected the outer circle left the diameter unchanged. Thus, Einstein concluded in a way that surprised even him, the ratio of the circle to the diameter was no longer pi. It caused space to bend, and in a very special way, a contracted way. So now I have the final ingredient. And he spent the rest of his life trying to come up with a formula, and he even describes it as being a rank 2 tensor. And I found it, and it comes from Newton.
Okay.
It was already out there. And all I had to do is, I got some special training from a physicist because I knew the formula I wanted to understand how it was derived. So once I did that, I came up with a small system of equations that I could use, and I solved for the mass of the neutron and the proton. And it's very easy to do. And all it takes is the accelerated motion of unbalanced charges. Whenever you have that circumstance, space contracts around these, and this type of motion is accelerated motion. I'm not talking about just going straight ahead and going faster and faster. This type, when you're in a circular or elliptical motion, is accelerated motion, and that was the key, because particles do that.
Okay.
Particles do that, and Einstein didn't know about the quarks, so he couldn't come up with the model. But I found that this is what's going on inside of the neutron and the proton. The quarks are traveling, and they form this structure called a trefoil knot.
I'm gonna make the screen bigger for you. One sec. Just keep talking.
Yeah, this is the trefoil knot, the simplest knot there is. And this provides not only the gravitational force is emitted from this, because this not only is doing this at 99, the quarks are moving at 99% the speed of light at this very short distance. So they're causing a contraction around them at the perimeter as they move at this speed. But this thing is spinning, or is rolling and spinning. So what you get basically is a rapidly rotating precessing sphere. And that's exactly what you need, thanks to the Ehrenfest paradox. That was the key ingredient to coming up with that idea. Once you get that, you're going to get a gravitational field at the perimeter of every neutron and every proton and every electron that moves in an orbital. They're all doing the same thing. And this is how all the particles get their mass. And this is where gravity comes from. These slight contractions of space, which you'll notice this thing has no poles. Gravitational field has no poles. This is perfect. This is the only reasonable solution to the problem. And it was there waiting in the dust in the libraries, just waiting to be rediscovered again. And that's the unified field theory, as quickly as I could say it. Basically, gravity is caused by the accelerated motion of fundamental unbalanced charges. When charges move in this way, they cause the space in and around the particle to contract. Gravity is a contraction of the spatial medium, the ether.
So you mentioned special relativity, but like yours is your book is super. So how do we go from special to super?
Well, we, like Einstein, special relativity, general relativity kind of uses special relativity in this thing that I just talked to you about, the Ehrenfest paradox, to extend or explain or find a method for gravity, the creation, the mechanical method for creation of the gravitational field. So super relativity is the solution, the explanation for something that Einstein said in general relativity, which somehow acceleration and gravity are the same thing. But they didn't have any mechanical model. There was no explanation how that could work. What I just provided to you was that explanation. Now there is a physical, mechanical, meaningful explanation for how this all works. Okay. So that is the super relativity. And then coming out of that, other things sprouted. You know, after I worked out this problem with mass, which basically, before all that I said, all that I read to you, I had a happiest thought of my own, which got me to study and look for these clues, which basically I'm sitting at work and I'm at my office and I'm looking at this fundamental particles interactions chart that's on my wall that I like to look at. This is why all these particles have mass but the photon. And I says, the photon must be doing something different. What is it doing different than all these other particles? I says, well, all these other particles are unbalanced charges. They're either positive or they're negative. And all of those have mass. And then I said, well, the photon has a balanced charge. And it also travels in a straight line and it never accelerates. And then it just, the happy thought, oh God, that's it. The photon doesn't accelerate, and it doesn't accelerate because it has a balanced charge, which makes it move in a straight line at the maximum constant rate of speed. Therefore, it generates no mass. All the other particles have mass because they have angular momentum, and this is going to be the cause of their mass. It's going to cause a slight curvature and bending and contraction of space when they move in that manner. It was so simple, it was like, you know, almost laughable.
So, all right. So I'm listening here. I'm trying to understand you. You're bringing in gravity. So then we got into anti-gravity, which is what is that? And according to you, like your interpretation of that, and how does everything you've just explained fit into that, or is it the opposite, as the word implies?
Well, when I worked on, and when I discovered that gravity is just a contraction of space, and then the solution for, well, what is anti-gravity? If this is a contraction of space and this causes gravity, then this must cause anti-gravity. So somehow the motion of particles again, in some manner or form, must be possible to create an expansion of space. And then I looked at what I had left to work with, and that was basically the electrostatic field and magnetism. So when realizing that magnetism is a rotation of space, and also knowing, I'm making a connection now to what I read when I was a teenager, that the U.S. Air Force was sending out, during Project Blue Book, a lot of times they would send an investigator out with a magnometer, a device that measures magnetic fields. So in my head, I'm saying, wow, well, there's a clue. It seems that the aliens, that when they use anti-gravity, the ships are emitting a very powerful magnetic field. So for many years, I said, I don't know how, but somehow a magnetic field must be able to be used to create an anti-gravity field. And then through the years, when I realized that it's a rotation of space, I realized that causes a stretching of space, causes it to get thinner. And so that would mean that the permittivity and permeability would be reduced, which is very important. Because if you reduce permittivity and permeability, not only can you experience less gravity, but you experience less inertia, and you can break the light speed barrier, which is absolutely, it's not good enough just to make an anti-gravity field. You have to be able to use that anti-gravity field for propulsion, and that propulsion has to be able to be much faster than the speed of light, or we'll never get to other star systems. If it's just the speed of light, it's still too slow. Okay. So I realized using a magnetic field, if you make it powerful enough, you cause that space to thin out, stretch due to this rotation coming from the magnetic field. And that's exactly what you need to create what I call the slip wave, which is the mechanism used by particles. I look to nature to see how they work, how they move, how they all move. Which is a complete mystery. Physics works on something called kinematics, which means they study the motion of particles, but they don't know the cause, and they don't want to touch it. You ask them the cause, they start to, oh, well, that's at the fundamental reality. We don't really even talk about that. The only person I know that was actually looking to solve that problem, the kinematics problem, instead of just, oh, we're just going to use the numbers. We know what they are. They're moving at this speed, and we don't care how they're moving. Well, Einstein knew better. And in his unified field theory in I think it was 25, he says, the very last two sentences when he's trying to solve the unified theory problem in his paper, nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derived. The reason for that is that I did not succeed in deriving equations of the motions for particles yet. He knew it was important. Nobody else even wants to touch it. Still today, they don't. So the slip wave, the cause of motion of particles, turns out to be the way that we're going to build spacecraft that can go at interstellar speeds. I mean, we can go not just 10 times faster than light, or 100, we need to go tens of thousands of times faster than the speed of light so that we can get it to another star system like they did in Star Trek, a few hours, a few days, even minutes in some cases. If we go at the speed of light, it takes 4.2 years to get to Proxima Centauri. One way, that's way too long. I mean, if you go much further than that, it's That's a long time just to be sitting in space, twiddling your thumbs, waiting to get somewhere. You got to go
So you mentioned, no, like I completely understand the process and the need to do that. And you've mentioned alien tech. So I want to segue into that. Do you, as much as you know about Einstein, was Einstein involved in any, to your knowledge, any of this UFO, Project Blue Book, any of that kind of stuff behind the lines, Philadelphia experiment comes to mind, but
no, he was long gone before all that.
mm-hmm.
The only thing that I believe that he was involved in was the Philadelphia experiment.
Mm-hmm. Do you know much about that?
The beginning of the Stargate technology.
Okay, so good. Let's talk about that. So, what do you remember about the Philadelphia project or experiment?
Well, it basically they wanted to make ships radar invisible. And they thought, well, if we can bend the light, which, if a magnetic field is strong enough, it theoretically should be able to do that. You wanted to change the angle so they could bounce radar off a ship and then back to their ship. You could cause the light to just basically deflect in odd directions and it never would return. That was the goal. And they used the magnetic resonant fields. And so they did that experiment. And it not only made it radar invisible, it also made it visually invisible, which was kind of a shock and a surprise. And apparently, according to the testimony of the people who were on board, the ones that survived, they went interdimensional for a few minutes and did a small bit of time travel, went back in time, I think like 10 minutes. All this from using a magnetic resonant field, a very powerful one. And the Navy, and then of course the Air Force got involved later on with the Montauk Project, and they continued studying this phenomena to see if they could use it in some way or form. But eventually, I believe they abandoned the magnetic resonant field technology for a more advanced technology that uses accelerated light passing through a certain device called it's a material. It's called a left-handed material, and there's another name for it. Metamaterial.
Okay.
And a metamaterial, because they can use it in something called a fractal lens. And in theory, according to the people on ResearchGate, the material scientists are claiming that when you shine light into this material, it goes infinitely fast, which makes sense if what they're doing is true, which they reduce the permittivity and permeability within this material to zero. And if you do that, then that's how fast the light's going to go inside of that material. So with that in mind, you can build a Stargate frame where you shoot light particles of a certain frequency in there. And when they come out, they're screaming at some ungodly speed, which then causes them to be highly compressed. So you have these ultra high frequencies. And so that's making the space vibrate at incredibly high. It's tuning it to like another dimension, much higher frequency. And perhaps using that in conjunction with high frequency sound or something of that nature. Between the two, you got this, just like on the show, probably, some sort of a special weird effect occurs where you could see through into another place or another time. So I believe that's the technology they're using now. But that chapter is my most speculative chapter in the book. I'm just trying to imagine how a Stargate could be built. And so I studied the Montauk Project, and
we have evidence of all these theories. We have the science and the math that shows it's possible, and the government experimenting with it. Do you think that they know the answers and they're just not telling us? Do you think they've solved it? on a military level versus us trying to figure it out like on the civilian side?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they have. Of course, they're not going to. This is all types of technologies that give them a strategic military advantage. So they're not going to talk about it. And in the course of doing all this work, they're going to, be bumping into aliens, ETs, all of that stuff. And I don't know when they're going to ever disclose all this stuff, but there are insiders that have seen things. I know somebody. I know that we have the UFO technology because of somebody that contacted me that saw a UFO close up. They've never gone public. The two people that saw this thing back in the 70s, and they're frightened, naturally, because bad things happen to people who talk about the Air Force having UFO technology. But these people said that they were able to walk right up to it and look at the markings on it, and it said U.S. Air Force experimental on the UFO that they saw. And then they stepped back, and it did a lot of vibrating and making certain strange rolling type noises, and then it took off. So do we have UFO technology? As far as I'm concerned, yeah, we have it. I think some of what we're seeing nowadays is our stuff and not ET technology, but I think there's plenty of both going on out there right now. And Stargate tech, it's rumored that we have it, but do I have any firsthand experience? No, of course not.
So how do you imagine they would use it? Like, I mean, the technology exists, the government has it. It's not sharing it with us, but they're using it, or are they just not using it and just not telling us so we don't use it? Like what's going? What do you speculate is really happening here?
There's really two ways to use it. I mean, you can use it to travel great distances in a very short amount of time, but you can also use it, unfortunately, for time travel. I'm not happy about that.
Now, can you travel?
Time travel not to be possible, but unfortunately, with this technology, since and the only way time travel can work is if the whole universe and beyond the superverse, all time is happening at once. So if you go outside of our limited material dimension, time is going on all at the same time. There is just the moment, and it's accessible if you could use this technology to go back in time. And I suspect strongly they're using it mostly to go back in time and try to change things, which would explain the Mandela effect somewhat. If they're dealing with things and changing things, if they change it too much, it'll pollute the timeline, then we'll really have a problem. But
one thing that has always wrapped my head, I couldn't wrap my head around with terms of time travel, is, and I mean, I'm nowhere close to the spectrum that you're on. Like this is, I'm not a scientist. I'm an investigator. I refer to people like you to tell me what these things are. But I mean, but with time travel, when I try to comprehend it, my understanding of it, as an analogy, I would look at a video, this recording as an example. So we are live right now. People are watching this in this instant, but it's being recorded. So that way people can go back and watch it on a replay. So they're technically going back in time, in present time, to see something that has already happened. So that part makes sense to me. So if someone were to travel back in time, does that mean it's recorded somewhere or stored in some sort of space in which we're able to see it? Like, how does that work? Because I just feel like I can imagine us moving faster to slow time down forward. I just can't comprehend moving back.
Well, there's a couple of misconceptions. Yes, if you move faster and faster, according to the Lorentz transformations, time will slow down and come to a stop. But time really doesn't, because it doesn't really exist. Time doesn't really slow down and stop. What does is the clocks that are measuring it. And they're using that to say that, oh, well, it's time that's slowing down. No, Because if you did the twin paradox experiment and you did a little slightly different version of it, if you had the people here stationary on Earth and the rocket going out at the speed of light and the rocket coming back at the speed of light, the clock would be stopped the whole time. Let's say it traveled for an hour at the speed of light and it traveled for an hour back. It would be stopped those 2 hours. So the clock difference when it got back would be 2 hours off. The clock will have not moved, and they will be like they're in the past, but they're not, because when they get back, they're in the same exact moment as the people here on Earth and the other people who are watching the whole thing in another stationary position. So, and this person is watching the other guy go back and forth, and he sees he never leaves our present time. The ship is going fast, speed of light, and then it's coming back, and the clocks are different. But when we all get back and compare our clocks, my clock and the Earth clock match, the other guy's doesn't, but we're all still in the same present moment. That guy never went back in time. He never stayed back in time. It's just his clock stopped. And there's molecular atomic reasons why the clock stops and how we misinterpreted this to mean that time is stopping or slowing down.
Would the time traveler age, as far as our understanding of age?
No, see, the traveler will not age for the same reason the clock stopped, because all the molecules, all the atoms, and all the electrons going are all getting flattened as you're going toward the speed of light and unable to vibrate and move normally as they do, which stops. Their mass is increasing. Everything is happening as you accelerate toward the speed of light, that if you're not in the slip wave, slip wave is an entirely different story. But all of those Lorentz transformations, which I studied a long time, I ran those math formulas and watched the numbers change and saw you get a contraction of light, you get an increase in mass, time slows down, the clock slows down. But all these things are all happening because the molecules and the atoms, they can't move in a full 3D dimension and oscillate, which would cause your body, your molecules in your body to age 2 hours because of their motion, their metabolic rate. All that gets crushed and stopped because you're moving in this forward direction, and it's basically bringing everything else molecularly, atomically to a halt, because it's all consumed and going in this direction, the maximum velocity. So that's why all that happens. But scientists will argue, oh no, if you're in that ship, you won't notice anything. You're wrong. That, my friends, scientists, you're wrong about that. You will notice a lot of things. The only way to escape that is to be inside of the slip wave field. When you do that, inertia is canceled, contraction of length is canceled, time dilation is canceled. Actually, your time goes just a little bit faster, even at 50,000 times the speed of light, which I explain in detail in the book. But it's a tricky business working with space, because it's all about what you do, how you bias the space that causes these rules to change, these transformations to change. And he who masters space is the master of reality.
No, I'm with you on that. So we're gonna pause and take our commercial break. So it'll be about 5 minutes, and we'll come back. I like where this is going. Where I want to come back to after the break is I want to talk about, you mentioned near-death experiences. So I want to dive into that a little bit on how that was for you. Walk me through that, and then maybe we can kind of segue in that into this ether and bring that and trying to connect this in a full circle, because I feel like that's us trying to understand this in this material world science so we can understand it and explain it to people. And this might be a little complicated for a lot of people to understand, but we still have a lot of people listening live to this. So, but the other side, the stuff we can't explain, I feel like these are connected, and this is kind of how we can do that bridge. And that's what I want to get into when we get back.
Okay.
All right. So remember, we're listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experience Support Association, and we will be right back.
It's your business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that we're
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. Just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
Welcome to the Observation Deck, a state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind virtual platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus, just like you would in real life. First, you install the application and design your very own unique avatar. Then you're free to explore the various areas of the campus at any time from anywhere. There's so many areas and activities to choose from on the platform. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, a large expo hall, a movie theater, a nightclub, an art gallery, and even a beach. Come attend a conference, or take a class, or hear a lecture. Meet new friends and interact directly with presenters. It's all right here on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Where in the world will you go?
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today by going to tesacan.org/EA. That's TESACAN.org/EA. Welcome back to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. I'm still here with Mark Fiorentino. Am I saying your name right? How do I say your last name?
Fiorentino, that's right.
Fiorentino. All right, awesome. So before the break, we were talking heavily about science and physics and quantum stuff and a bunch of smart things that you are very, very well informed with. And I want to speak on near-death experiences because I'm curious to know how that was for you and what you experienced on the other side.
Okay, so let's clear something up. Right, I studied near-death experience. I did not have.
Okay.
Well, this is a common thing. A lot of people think that I have because I mentioned it, and it's in my book. There's a
okay. I apologize. I misunderstood that. So okay, what did you study then? What did you learn about
one
those
in particular? It comes about from an idea that actually Einstein gave me the idea. He said, "I want to know how God created this world. I am not interested in this or that phenomena in the spectrum or this or that element. I want to know his thoughts. The rest are details." So I thought to myself one day, I said, I want to read God's mind. You can't do that because God is all powerful and he's only going to tell you what he wants. And, if you have a conversation, you'll know what he's thinking maybe. So who does that? I thought, I want to know his thoughts. I mean, this is what the unified field theory is all about. So I thought, who's talked to God? People who have died and came back. There's literally tens and tens of thousands of them. So I thought, well, I'm looking for something Einstein's looking for right now. I'm looking for the thing called the signature. I thought to myself, God created this universe, somewhere he's going to sign it. Just like anybody else signs a picture or a photograph or their music, the creator must sign his work somewhere. And I thought to myself, well, the best place, I'm thinking about, and I says, the signature will be, this little riddle pops in my head. The signature will be in everywhere and everything, but impossible to see. So I thought, well, probably that means inside of the atom, and that kind of makes sense to me. So there'll be some sort of a dynamical geometry, but I didn't know what it would look like. I know only this, since there's 3 quarks inside of the neutron and the proton, whatever that geometry has, it's going to have 3 elements. So that's what I'm going to look for. So I started reading NDEs, looking for somebody that saw something that was a dynamical geometry, something in motion, geometrically moving, and God saying, this is the thing that and I found it. And I found somebody that sees that.
Mm-hmm.
And a sphere and all these platonic solids all around it. And God tells her, Linclair Dennis, that, I am the source of the sun. I am the energy that forms mass. And these are all the things that are making sense to me. I says, that's it. This is the real deal. That's the inside. That's what's going on inside of protons and neutrons. And so that whole research, which took me a couple of weeks of reading, I go into near-death websites looking specifically for a message. I'm saying, if God wants me to know this, or any of us to know this, he'll tell somebody. He'll tell them in one of these NDEs. And if I don't find one, then I guess he didn't want us to know. But I did find it. And, I got her book. It's called The Pattern. And I read it. And I says, this is the real deal. And so I called them up and emailed them, and we talked, and I was a part of their group for a while. But we had a basic disagreement. And that disagreement basically was, even though she had a near-death experience, she's associated now with all these mathematicians and scientist people, and they've kind of talked her out of the whole NDE thing. And now she doesn't know if there's a God, which is very rare for a near-death person. I mean, they come back and every last one of them is absolutely sure there's a God. And I believe that. But she's been heavily influenced by a person she works with. It was a very fine man, Dr. Kaufman. And he's an agnostic. And so she's an agnostic. And so there you go. And I said, well, I believe you more than you believe in you. because I believe you did talk to God, and I believe he showed you how he does it. And from that point off, I broke off, and I said, I'll find the formula myself. I was going to work with them, but then I decided I'll just solve it on my own.
Okay.
And so that's how I got into the whole near-death thing. It was just
so is it possible that they're tapping in? They're going into the ether then. So they're experiencing this other side when they pass.
It's
and come back
on the ether.
Okay.
I think the ether is God himself. Here's another person, another NDE person, who again talks about the creation. And it's Father Rick Wendell. It's a great video. I have it in my blog on my website. And he says, as others have said, all of this three-dimensional world is within God. There is nothing outside of God. Everything within this physical universe has to correspond to laws, and God set those laws. They are immutable as God is immutable. None of this, what we see and experience, is an accident. It is intentioned by God. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like what they say, the Matrix kind of thing here. It is kind of like that, because everything we see, everything is from God. It's in God's consciousness, and we're in it. And this is just one dimension of probably an infinite amount of dimensions and universes that exist, and more being created all the time. This is heavy stuff to think about. I understand that, and I don't spend too much time because it gets me a little dizzy. When you start getting into the infinite, it's pretty hard for a finite being mortal being to deal with. But I believe
it's knowledge, right? This is good. It's educational. It's relevant to a lot of things. It's just, this is science. This is numbers. This is physics. This is, important stuff to explain why certain things happen to people and certain experiences and the existence of places. So now that we know, according to science, at least in this way, that there is a God exists, or evidence that a God exists, there's evidence of something more in this space, so this ether here, and then another space. What about like outer space, outside of the Earth? Like, is there a space as well, or is that linear too with time? And like, where's that? How do you science that?
Space in general, it's everywhere. I think it probably goes on infinitely. Mm-hmm. From what I understand from another ND, I've read hundreds and hundreds of them, looking for clues and looking for patterns in them. And this one particular fella, he had an NDE, and he had some questions like we have and are talking about here tonight. And he decided he wanted to go outside of the universe. Mm-hmm. So, as someone brought up earlier, the speed of thought, in an instant, he was beyond our entire universe, and he saw it as this little tiny ball of light. You could, resolve like little bits of stars and galaxies and whatever, just this little ball of light. And then he looked around, and way over here was another, and then on the other side another, and up there it was a grid work going on forever of universes, the superverse, and the root. And I don't know, the laws of physics are the same in all these other universes. They may be different. Some may be a different density universe, a higher frequency. Who knows? And there's other dimensions, and all the dimensions are all going in parallel, and time is all going in parallel. And in order to be able to experience that, you have to get outside of time and outside of the dimensions. And the only way to do that is to die. And when you go back to that universal consciousness and you connect in, you have access to all these information, all these questions are answered, and that's all great. But what I've tried to do is make a connection here through mediums, through NDE, and accept that evidence.
You've spent a lot of time analyzing and trying to understand and explain these phenomenons. I am interested in knowing what you believe and if you've actually experienced anything you can't explain, i.e., in the paranormal spectrum or have you seen a UFO, an alien, ET? If you didn't have a near-death experience, I misunderstood that by the way this was written for me. But have you had any unusual experience that can't be explained?
Loads of them.
Okay, so let's talk about those.
I could fill 2 hours.
Well, I mean, let's
easily, and I have on other shows where we just talked about that only. I have seen UFOs. Have I been in one? No. Have I seen an alien? No. But I've seen them. I saw one right outside my house at 3 a.m. with my wife, who doesn't believe in UFOs and still won't talk about it.
So, what's the most significant one that you've seen? Walk me through that. Explain that event to me.
Well, paranormal, guardian angel related. The most significant event that happened to me, well, there's two. They're kind of in a tie. The first time I went to a medium and they told me in the future, what we're having happening now was going to happen. Basically, they didn't give me any details, but they said something, some discovery or something of a significant importance is going to happen much later in life. Then the other very significant thing, I'm going to go 3. I'm going to go beginning, middle, end. The second most influential thing and very important thing was I had my life saved by my guardian angel. And so what happened at this particular day is I'm driving home from work at IBM and T intersection. I can go left, private, quiet roads, a little bit longer, more peaceful, or I can go right, shorter, lots more traffic, lots more lights. And most of the time I go left. So I'm pulling up to this intersection. I'm thinking, I think I'm going to go left today. And as soon as I had that thought, on my left ear, I don't hear something in my head. I hear as if somebody's right next to my ear and talks and says, don't go that way. I whip around in my car, look behind me because I think there's somebody in the car because I heard a voice say, don't go that way. And I shook it off, being a man of science, basically, and somewhat not able to understand and accept that. I shake it off and said, I'm going to go that. And then again, it says, don't go that way. And I look around again. And what did I do? I went that way because now I want the evidence. Something from the supernatural, someone, which I am assuming at this point of being a guardian angel, is trying to warn me about something. But if I go right and I don't, I'll never see what it was. So I thought, I got to go that way. So I got to see what's going to happen. I got to see that was real. And so I went that way and it says, well, what's going to happen? What's the worst thing can happen? Head-on collision. So I'm driving behind somebody and I'm being real careful. And I was about 3/4 of the way home on a 2-lane road, straight 2-lane road. And all of a sudden I see this truck starting to swerve wildly, going into the other lane. Cars are going off the road into the ditch. And he keeps doing it. And he's going wild, back and forth across both lanes. And so finally, I said, he's coming at me. So I turn the wheel as hard as I can. I go off into a ditch. We missed by a few inches. And I remember that it was like slow motion as going by, this guy going by. And then he spins out and stops in the middle of the road. So I thought, while I was sitting in a ditch in my car, I'm thinking, the next time somebody tells you not to go that way, listen to them. And I apologize to them for not. Somebody's going out of their way on the other side to warn me not to do something so I don't die, and I do it anyway. And I think, how stupid was I? Because I had to prove this thing. But fortunately, the warning worked well enough that I was not daydreaming and I was alert and aware and was able to take evasive action. But that was significant. Paranormal event that proved to me beyond any shadow of a doubt, we have guardian angels, there is an afterlife, and there's something bigger going on here. There's some sort of life plan at work here. I was not to leave this life and an early exit point.
Were you unconscious at all after you went in the ditch? Anything like a?
No, I was fully conscious. I never lost consciousness the whole time. It was had I hit the guy or he hit me, I might have. But
well, no, I was just kind of looking for a little secret. Like that was a near-death experience, but you didn't. But you didn't go unconscious, so you were conscious.
As far as I know, I did not that I know of, because there was nothing.
That was like a near death experience.
A near miss death.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is when I met Tamara many years, Tamara Richardson, who's a psychic medium, extraordinarily gifted psychic medium, who I met, and then she confirmed after all these many years what my life plan was and why I'm here. So that's very significant. The suspicions I had were finally confirmed, and only this psychic medium could do it because I had finally reached the point on my own by writing the book. And I had done the work that I was meant to do. Part of it, it's still more to be done, but that part was done. I finally, figured out what I'm supposed to do, which was write this book and come up with that theory and put it all and write it all down, which I was instructed to do during this first read, which I had already done.
And that book is, what is that? That is
The Master of Reality.
Master of Reality. And you can find that is that on Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon, and you can get a signed copy from my website. I'll just mail it to you.
Okay, cool. That's great.
So yeah, there's a lot of paranormal, oh gosh.
So you're more on the paranormal side. What about ghosts, apparitions? Do you see any beings?
Yeah.
Okay.
In my bedroom at night during my divorce, there was a period there of great suffering. I mean, I was going through a living hell. The whole family was. My prior wife and my two kids and we were all miserable. I was alone in a small apartment, and sometimes I would pray, and at times my guardian angels would actually answer these prayers. And so I was having here and there little mini miracles. And then one night I was so disturbed and so saddened and so afraid, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was losing my faith. And I just asked him, are you here? Are you real? Can you help me do something? And then I fell asleep. I was having that prayer. In the middle of the night, I sort of wake up. I keep my eyes closed, but I'm feeling this buzzing sound, sort of like I guess what somebody might call some sort of astral trip or something. There was some sort of a buzzing sound. I said, I'm going to just keep my eyes closed and stay calm. And even though my eyes were closed, I could see like these pinkish orange right through my eyelids. I could see in my mind these pinkish orange, I don't want to say they're orbs, but they were, more shaped like humans, moving around. And I was sleeping with this right hand forward out on my side. And then I hear the sound of, like a voice, metallic sound, but I feel somebody squeeze my hand. Okay, so now there's two senses involved, sight and touch. And then after my hand is squeezed, I hear this jing, and I can't make it out. I'm trying to tune in. I'm a limited psychic abilities here. And squeeze, jing, squeeze. I says, okay, calm down. Just focus on the voice. And then I felt the squeeze, and then I heard it clearly say, did you feel that? Did you feel that? So they were squeezing and then asking me if I felt that. What was my prayer? My prayer was asking for proof, something that you're there, that, there's some reason why all this is, help me. They were just letting me know that they were there. And so I answered back in my mind, I could feel it, I was excited, I was happy. And I, and that's basically all that happened in that instance. They actually heard my prayer and answered it. And that's not the only time they've done that, but that was an amazing I needed to know for sure. I mean, which you asked me what I believe.
Mhm.
It's beyond belief now. It's knowledge, and that's more powerful than belief. When you know for sure, that's knowledge. And I know for sure there's an afterlife. I don't have to have an NDE. That convinces a lot of people, and they have the knowledge that it's real. And I know for sure now there's an afterlife, there's guardian angels, there's a God, a Jesus, a Buddha, you name it.
Being a man of science as well, how do you balance the thought? Because science sometimes proves that doesn't exist. So where do you?
Science never really doesn't prove, you can't prove something doesn't exist. All you have is experiments that basically fail to detect something, but that failure to detect something doesn't mean that something doesn't exist. That's the same problem they had with the ether. They had an experiment where they tried to prove that the ether existed by detecting the Earth's motion in the ether. But they used the photon to detect the motion, the interferometer shooting beams at right angles, and they were doing it at different times of the year. And they thought they would get a different, rate of motion in one of the beams because it was going with or against the ether wind. But what they found, no matter what time of the year they did it, it was always the same. What they didn't know in that time was what they do know now. Is the photon always moves at the speed of light, and it's completely independent of the motion of any emitting or receiving source. So this experiment could never have proved it. It was a bad designed experiment, but everybody was fooled by it. And so there's an instance where science fails to interpret something properly. So with this afterlife, I've heard them try to explain away near deaths. Neil deGrasse Tyson says, well, the light, they see this light. And he's saying, you know what I think it is? It's the light on above the operating table. They're seeing the light at the...
Well, not everybody has a near death in an operating room.
On the operating table. So
Yeah.
Sometimes they're in a car. Sometimes
and a near death is proven physically. It's just it's where the mind goes. Where the mind goes, yeah.
Neil, have an open mind. You know what? You're wrong about that. There really is an afterlife. And the light over the operating table thing, that doesn't explain it at all.
It could for some, but I mean that's the thing. What about noetic? Have you ever had an epiphany, like noetic kind of experience where all of a sudden you just got information out of nowhere? Revelation?
You're talking like was Saint, I think it's there was a Saint Thomas Aquinas. He calls that infusion, where you get information directly. It's the same thing, what you would also call channeling.
Okay.
Where you're getting that. I how I do it, I just, at night, I wake up typically between 2 and 5 in the morning, and I do mind experiments.
Okay.
In the same way that Einstein did. I imagine this, I look at it, I try to, you might call that a strange form of remote viewing, where I'm looking at particles, I'm looking at waves, I'm trying to see so that I can understand the mechanics behind these things. And that's what I do. Do I, go into a channel or, channeling mode or anything? No, there's psychics that can do that. And I'm working with one now to get information from very famous people who work in my field, including Einstein. And I'm open to that. I'm going to give it a try.
So
I want to merge science with religion and spiritualism. They shouldn't be separated.
So what about another guy that's kind of super smart as well, that's kind of working towards free energy, or was at least Tesla.
I knew you were going to say Tesla.
So what's your opinion on that and him separate and how that ties in?
Well, I
to
got a few
everything
things.
here.
First of all, Tesla and Einstein, I don't think got along too well.
No,
I was kind of surprised to hear that. But I admire both. And Tesla was the greatest visionary and practical applications genius that there ever was.
So the reason why I went into that is because Tesla
let's just
has.
say I've had some through Tamara. Tesla's trying to come through and get me to do some work, which I will eventually look into.
Interesting.
So
I had a feeling so channeling or noetic experience is kind of something I experience sometimes. So this for me was just a kind of like just Tesla just kind of popped up. So that could have been and then that's kind of weird.
In one of our rings, he's popped up along with Einstein and Ray Bradbury. I mean, the list it's a short list, but it's a very impressive list.
Well, some would say he was noetic as well, and some would say that he was able to communicate with the other side. He was more open with expressing that.
I don't know much about his spiritual side. I read a book about him, but it pretty much stuck to his main inventions and his struggle with Edison. That was a titanic battle. And him trying to bring free energy into the world. He had some noble ideas, definitely, and I think he's still trying to do some work with healing, and that's the messages we're kind of getting.
Well, that kind of all comes back to we've come full circle now when we talk about the possibility of or the science that explains the existence of these time traveling and free energy and manipulating of space and time, and we have these geniuses that were trying to explain that and show that and experiment with that. Two of them obviously didn't get along. I'm always curious to know why they didn't get along. Two opposing facts, AC/DC. We refer to Edison too, but it just we don't have anyone doing that anymore. So is there no need to revolutionize and create this technology for the people, or have they solved it and they have it and they're doing it in secret, and why not share it with us? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, Tesla doesn't show up until I decide I'm going to do some experiments. If I'm, going to bring this forward, I'm trying to bring anti-gravity into the world, and I've proposed experiments, and I'm trying to get people to do them. And I'm saying, well, maybe Mark, you ought to do it. So when I made that decision, all of a sudden, because this is a Tesla-like experiment that I'm going to try and do, all of a sudden, he shows up. He starts talking to Tamara, and she's calling me up and saying he's giving me messages. So then you bring it up, you get this feeling. So there's this strange synchronicity, and this has been going on more and more now that I'm at this point where, I've written this book and I've worked on this, and I have the solution. I need to mention this on ResearchGate for unified field theory. I have a paper there. That's on my website on the front page. You click on the button, it'll take you right to that research paper on the origins of mass, gravity, and inertia with the mathematics, the solution. So right now, we're living in a time where the unified field theory problem has been solved. And the paper, and it's a 50-page long paper. I spent 45 pages explaining the mechanics of the math, just so nobody misunderstands or misinterprets what that math is saying and doing. And so that's available for everybody, and I want to get that message out there. Please go to ResearchGate, look up me, or go to my website and click on that button, and it'll take you straight there, and you can read that paper.
I'm trying to get the screen up for you while you're talking about it. So it's what is it? Super dash relativity. If I spell it
Yeah,
right. Rel. There you go.
that's
Right.
the one.
There you go. And there's your book there as well.
I'm going to zoom up here so I can see better. Yeah, there it is. The big orange button right there at the bottom.
Right there. So we click that, and it'll bring you here.
Yeah, I have two papers. The first paper, I got a number out of there that I needed so that I could do the second paper, which I did 4 or 5 years before. I just, this is another strange thing. I just said, I'm going to solve how mass is created by calculating the speed of quarks inside of the neutron and proton. So I did that paper, and all that paper does is all the math. Eventually, I calculate that they're moving at 99% of the speed of light, and I use that number in the next paper, along with some other equations to finally. I had to know that number, and then I use that number and plug it into the equations, and I get the creation of mass, the proper number.
Mm-hmm.
What the neutron and the proton weigh. I only calculated the neutron, but so yeah, I proved the ether in that paper. I talk about the Lorentz contraction right there. I'm showing you the spheric contraction. This is all the methodology. This is all the mechanics that creates gravity and mass. That's the old program I wrote in Visual Basic. This is years ago. That spent several weeks searching for the crossing point, and I found out later I could have done it with simple algebra and have done it in a few hours. But there it is. See the crossing point? That's the speed right there, where the two different quarks are basically moving at near the same velocity, and that's the number I eventually pull out here, and I use in my other. That's the Lorentz transformations. Yeah. So that's the first paper, and as it turns out, I needed to do that in order to complete. It's an awfully strange coincidence that out of the blue I would go and do all that work just on like an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, years later, I need that number so that I can do the other equation and complete the proof for how gravity and mass are created, and actually how inertia works as well.
There are a lot of people that have these experiences. So my I guess the whole night we've been talking about the existence of the space and the acceptance of afterlife and other beings, extraterrestrial or interdimensional, and things like that too. What do you think is really going on? Like how are we coexisting? Is this a time travel thing, or is this or coexist? Like is it fast future people, or beings coming back to communicate with us, or are they here with us in this place in time right now, watching us in this reality?
It's kind of all of the above.
Yeah.
Why are we here? We're here to learn. It's like a school, and it's like a playground for some. It's an adventure. Life is an adventure. We're in the adventure right now, right here tonight. All of us who are watching and us that are talking, we're in a shared adventure, which makes it very special. It's not like you're in your own dream by yourself, and everything is certain aspect of you in this dream. We're all sharing these experiences and communicating and trying to work problems out, like what we're talking tonight, trying to get understanding and learning. It's as much about the journey as it is about the destination. The journey is just as important, if not more important. And that's certainly some of what I've learned going through this process, is that I have to travel the path. If I don't travel the path, I'm not going to get to where I'm going. And, and many
Yeah.
people in life get sidetracked.
You don't go, you don't get there.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and that's part of the life experience. You may fail, and get distracted by materialism or whatever, and go off and basically waste a lifetime. But, that's free will and choice. It's part of the game. And that's the way we all agreed we wanted it. So that's part of the life experience. It's an exciting adventure. And that's what, my thinking is on it. And I'm happy to participate in this very strange and unique assignment that I got. I'm very honored to be able to try to make all this good stuff happen. I would really love the anti-gravity.
I can relate to that experience. I've created what we call the ultra spectrum classification system, which basically removes all the archetypes of these labels of what we call it, UFO, paranormal, ghosts, noetic, psychic abilities, all this other stuff, and repackages it to reprogram to actually understand the many different ways in which people connect to the ether. And I've realized that the word ultra spectrum essentially means black light, and it is also UV, and which also means ether. So there is this part of me creating this system through experience and things like that, using it, doing some research, and then interpreting what it means. And I understand what you're saying in terms of, I really need to get this out there, because I feel like this system is what's needed in order to help people understand what they already know, just differently, and connect those dots, that missing piece, to help take them to that next level in my journey. But then at the same time in your journey, with your people, it just I think everybody is starting to get these little pieces separately, and then as we start to connect with each other, then that's how we're just going to evolve. I mean, that's how I'm trying to make sense of it, because I relate to you in that respect, as if I got all this information and I don't know what to do with it, other than I feel like it's meant for someone else, and that's what I do, and that's my passion, and that's take it and go. So
that sounds good. It sounds very good to me. You're finding your life's path, and just keep doing that.
Well, it found me. I didn't really look for it. I just kind of
Well, it's strange how it happens, but it's a beautiful thing. It's better than sitting and watching TV. I can tell you that right now. You might probably everybody I recommend, don't watch too much TV.
You don't learn. TV
program. Time, but
time. Yeah. What is time?
Yeah, okay. You want to use your time here. Your life is a gift from God. What you do with it is your gift back to Him. So make good choices and do good things. It's we're all part of us guys that are into the spiritual, the paranormal, all that. We're kind of on. I think of it as like God's team, because we're trying to bring forth proof, evidence. That's what the NDEers are doing. He's recruiting millions of people through NDEs now all over the world, and giving them basically, the same message. Come back and tell them, I'm real. Heaven is real. Time and time again.
Does the Bible, the Christian Bible or Catholic Bible, at all indicate any signs of the ether or time travel?
Not that I know of. I mean, there might be somebody that has an interpretation that believes that. I'm not a Bible expert.
That's okay.
But, if I ever would have heard something that sounded like that, I would have remembered it. But so far, I have not encountered any references to the ether there. As far as super relativity is concerned, the ether is just a quasi-elastic solid, which is basically the same type of belief that Lorentz and Einstein had. The special relativity equations came from a stationary quasi-elastic solid model of the ether. So it's the substance from which we can form matter or a magnetic field, a field of force, or a gravitational field of force. and an electrostatic field of force. These are all different bendings or deformations of that material substance. And it's actually a very simple system. Once you get that all straight in your mind and you know it's real and true, you can construct the whole universe with everything happening. The universe turns into a clockwork again, like Newton thought it was. In my mind, I look at it as like this beautiful ballet of things swirling and bumping into each other and twirling. There's no accidents. There's nothing random. There is extreme chaos because there's so many things happening all at once and bumping into each other. It's hard to look at. It gives the appearance of being random, but it's not. There are no accidents in this universe. Everything happens for a reason. Everything is determined. And we have free will and choice to make things happen if we want to, if we have a mind to. And definitely at this point, I'm trying to make some really good things happening. And I'm still working. I'm going to work on another book, work on some experiments.
So before we do our last segment of the night, I would like you to tell everybody again where they can find your book and anything else, and find you, of course.
Okay. I'm on my website, www.super-relativity.com. And everything you need really is on that front page and those buttons that we saw. There's a blog there, and you can buy a personal book there, or you can get it from Amazon, and they'll ship it to you. And I'd like to get into bookstores at some point, but that's, I guess, something I got to do down the road. But everything is there. And then please go to my YouTube channel. Like to put, if you don't mind, I'd like to put this video on there if that's permissible. If not, that's fine.
You do whatever you need to do. Just share it, and we can help you with that.
Put it on there.
Yeah.
I like to put them all in one place, as many as I can get, so people can come to this one spot and see all my explanations and so forth.
Yeah,
so
no worries.
Please come to the, my YouTube channel link is also on that front page of the Super Relativity website.
Okay.
And please.
And I see Cece's been doing a great job putting in your links as you bring them up too. So thank you for doing that.
Yes. I see it flashing up here every once in a while.
So that's good. So
I got a Facebook too. I forgot about Facebook.
It's all good. You can find him on social media. Just type in his name. I'll help you out. Mark Fiorentino, and look up his book. I keep forgetting it. What's your book? Master of Reality. It's just there's so many realities in this. That's why I keep forgetting it. It's like
the Black Sabbath album or something of long ago.
All right, so this is the final segment of the night. It's called Sorry, Not Sorry. We'll be right back. Okay, so welcome to Sorry, Not Sorry. This is a social experiment, just so you know. So here are the rules. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to time how long it's going to take you to answer it. After that, I'm just going to share an alleged fact from a very controversial conspiracy theory, and it's a social experiment. So just don't worry about it. But do you accept the challenge?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me look at my watch here. Okay, with all the experience that you have in the world and your understanding of everything, what shape is the Earth?
Round.
Okay, well, that's not bad. 2 seconds. This is like you got the record for time.
Well, spherical shape.
Spherical? Well, was it round or spherical? Pick one.
Spherical. Round is not as precise. Spherical.
So the reason why I'm asking these questions too, because it is I spend a lot of time in groups, and I try to understand, people's different beliefs and understanding and logic and things, and how they come to these conclusions. So in the UFO and paranormal communities, sometimes they use the Bible as logic to reference the existence of extraterrestrials and angels and beings and all that other stuff. And yet the flat Earth people use the same book as reference to to suggest that the shape of the Earth is different. So the point of the experiment again is to see how a variance of how long it takes people to do it. So you were definitely certain of it, and I'm sure you are because of all the science and mathematics as I expected here, which is interesting because the next question is random, but I just feel like it was meant for you. But so this fact here, according to this book, I mean, I don't care what shape the Earth is. This is just an experiment here. But the fact that they use in the Bible, so according to Chronicles 16:30, Psalms 93, 96, and all this other stuff, the fact that they're trying to say is truth is that the Earth is not spinning according to the Bible. So that fact alone, is that possible? Is that true? Where do you stand on that?
No, it's not true. The Earth is spinning, and I can tell you, according to the theory of super relativity, why. There's something inside of the Earth, as there is in the sun. This is the origin of the spin. It's called neutronium, a neutronium sphere, where the neutronium spheres come from, the Big Bang. The sun, I'm telling you right now, write this down, has a solid neutronium core. This will eventually be discovered. I hope it's in my lifetime, but I am absolutely sure that all stars have neutronium spheres. And the planets. And why is it necessary to have neutronium spheres? They're all spinning because they have great mass and a great gravitational attraction, which draws in the hydrogen, which is the only reasonable explanation for how stars form. Hydrogen on its own in a gas in outer space is never going to come together and form a star without a gravitational source. So I say the Earth has a small neutronium sphere, which drew in a hydrogen, which formed into helium, silicon, oxygen, all of the elements that we happen to have here on Earth, which are created in the fusion process, which is very able to happen near a neutronium source or core. So that's my answer. And I'm
so the Bible is wrong.
The Bible is saying that you know what's wrong? Not so much with the Bible or any religious document. It's the misinterpretation that screws us up.
Exactly.
And we wind up warring with each other over arguing about these interpretations.
And that's the point of this experiment, is to to bring that out. And you just this is episode number 4, and you just solved the riddle before we got to the end. But that's true. That's exactly it. Because these, in the position of speculation and looking at evidence, we have two groups that have two different beliefs about two different things that yet can't really be definitively proven to that individual, because majority of us are not astronauts and we can't get there. However, it's trusting. It's all about trusting the science and trusting the government and trusting these people that are giving us the information on TV, so the programming, and there's that commonality is both parties don't trust that the information that they're getting is factual, but it's also misinformation too, because it's all spread out. But whether they believe the government is hiding the shape of the Earth or the government is hiding UFOs from us, the common denominator in that is that they both agree that the government is lying about something, but yet they can't work together on that. If they focused on that element and work together on why it is that they're lying, then perhaps we might get some truth. Doesn't mean that the shape of the Earth might not be the truth, but focus on the lie and the reason to lie. So with everything that we talked about tonight, this technology, this energy, this alien tech, there's evidence that someone has to know it exists, and the government has it. So in your opinion, your final thoughts, why have they not made it public? And why aren't we able to do it?
They've kept this secret, in my opinion, now, because of two reasons. There probably would be a panic if this stuff comes out. it depends on how it's presented. If it's presented, don't worry. There's, they're peaceful. They're not harming us. But then there's always going to be the people that don't believe them, right? The main reason that I think that the government controls this information because there's strategic military advantage in the technologies that they possess that are coming from ET, crashed UFOs and stuff that they developed and have now. Like they tried to keep the atom bomb secret and failed, but they learned from that. And I think now they deliberately put out this information in order to keep everybody chattering away, thinking this and that, and not really understanding what's going on. That's my main belief. I think that they're keeping it secret because if you have a UFO and the other guy doesn't, you're going to win the air battle every time.
Now, using the same logic, and then coming back to Neil deGrasse Tyson that you mentioned earlier, he is against the UFO theory as well. And he's also an advocate to say that the Earth isn't flat and things like that too. So using the same logic that you've just explained with the UFO phenomenon and just insert the flat Earth phenomenon, is there a difference in understanding and getting the truth in terms of information? Is like, it's not about the shape, it's about the misunderstanding and interpretation with the same information, because they use the same book in this experiment. Same book is used to conclude their facts. What's the difference?
The difference is in your bias. What you want to believe is true based on your prior experience and learning. If your professors tell you that there's no ether and not listen to Einstein and quantum mechanics is everything, you know what? They come out of school and they don't question it. And if they do question it, as some people have to some famous physicists like Richard Feynman or whatever, his reaction was, shut up and calculate. So you get browbeat into it. One way or the other, you get indoctrinated into one belief system or another.
But even when you calculate it, you still haven't gone to space. You still haven't gone to these places. So it's still a theory. It's still possible and impossible at the same time.
Well, you're hitting on a problem that's really very deep, and it has to do with how people come to believe one thing or another, what they believe is true. And there's always been a divide, and even like the simplest things, like if a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there to hear it, doesn't make
a sound.
50% of the people say, nobody there, doesn't make a noise. And you get the other 50 saying, of course there's a noise. And they'll argue back and forth. And neither one can convince the other based on their logic. There's some sort of logic that makes sense to their minds, and they stick with it. And
that's okay. But why do they fight so hard with each other?
Oh, well, there's the ego
to prove
angle.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's the ego angle that, I'm right, you're wrong. And, people really get cranked out of shape over that.
And this is
you
the
let
reason.
Go of that,
and I think that's the reason why they haven't told us that aliens exist. Because some people won't believe it.